Welcome to Acorn to Oak with Pennie Quaile-Pearce and co-host Matthew Donnachie. Within each acorn, there is the DNA that strives to be a mighty oak tree. All it needs to reach its potential for greatness is to be activated. You are the acorn. On this show, we will share with you the tools and guidance you need to grow into the person you are meant to be. And now your host, Pennie Quaile-Pearce and co-host Matthew Donnachie.
Hi, good evening and welcome to the show, folks. It's again, Matthew's not with us this evening, but Jill is, which is fantastic. And we're talking about conscious parenting type 2 or part 2, as Jill and I were discussing it last week. And, you know, it's very much a case of, you know, looking at children and how we parent our children. And, you know, the impact of our parenting style and basically how to react appropriately when children are under stress, strategies of how to grow a child's self-esteem, and very much it's, you know, fostering their natural talents, remaining calm and centered when you're in the middle of a battlefield, you know, establishing loving authority in your home, which creates conditions for open communication and building trust, and you know, basically building an atmosphere of harmony rather than criticism, bickering, put downs, resolving disagreements and conflicts constructively without power struggles, and how to recognise our parenting habits that destroy self-esteem and weaken relationships. And very much wanted to, I was very much involved in writing a course a few years ago on how we hypnotise our children. And, you know, it's so true that when we use different things to, and we repeat different things, it's very much about, you know, what type of, you know, voice are we using? Are we using a commanding tone or not? Anyway, I want Jill to be able to say good evening. I've started ranting off straight away, so, which is typical of me. But hi, Jill. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here again. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing the subject. And I know Pennie launches because it's the passion that you have for the subject. And yeah, I think so. I think obviously, you know, having a 3-year-old, I'm very passionate about it. But it's also very much about moving through and talking about, you know, as they grow older. And, you know, it's a bit of a nightmare when they actually start answering back, and, you know, not that Hector's not doing that now. It really made me laugh the other day because he's walking around going, calm down, mummy, calm down, mummy. And I just looked at it and just went, and who are we talking about here, Hector? And he just looked at me and just gave me one of those, you know, death ray stares, where he just looked at me and suddenly realised I was actually saying, you know, getting him to look at who was not calm. And I went, maybe Hector calm down would be a good idea. It's really, really interesting. And it's, you know, and as I said, you know, we can hypnotise our children into all sorts of different states of being, and it's really important, you know, when we look at conscious parenting to, you know, help them break that trance, help them break any trance that they get into. And that, you know, the frightening truth is that the human mind can be programmed, you know, in their normal waking life beneath the awareness of the people who are involved. You know, it's really important to realise that, you know, even as adults we can be hypnotised by all sorts of different things.
And advertising is very, very good at doing that. You know, they use hypnotic methods embedded in normal business conversations, and you know, it's a really chilling concept when you realise that. And so, you know, to know that we can be manipulated by everything that's going on in our day-to-day life, you can understand why it's really important to put out clear messages when we're teaching our children, so that they assume responsibility for their own feelings and actions. But it's also really important to, you know, enforce discipline without being heavy-handed, and it's really good when we keep that in our minds when we're actually talking with our children. As I said, you know, sometimes depending on what age they are, we feel like we're talking to ourselves. You know, when you get to the teenage grunt years, where you know all they answer is, yeah, it's a definite form of language called grunt for teenagers. And remembering to actually say, you know, if you want me to understand how you're feeling or where you want to go with this conversation, you need to actually talk to me in a language that I can understand. So it's being really important to ask that, and it's, you know, it's very, very important to remember that, you know, Milton, I think it was Milton Erickson who recognised that one of the world's most foremost experts in the field of hypnotherapy, before his death, was asked to treat a man who was dying from cancer and in extreme pain. And the man didn't want to be treated by hypnosis. But he was not, you know, but he also didn't want to take painkillers. And it's really important to remember that, you know, hypnosis is a therapy that can be a very, very, very useful tool. But it's very important to know that deep down in the soil, you know, growing good and strong and children is about being very clear about how we communicate with them and the phrases that we use. And it's really important to, you know, a growing child's mind, you know, is naturally full of questions. And, you know, obviously the most important ones are usually the who am I and what type of person I am and where do I fit. And these questions of self-definition, you know, and identity are based on our lives and the lives of the adults who surround us. And from, you know, we make our key decisions, because a child's mind is, remarkably affected by the statements which, you know, as soon as we say you are, you know, and as soon as we say the words you are, they actually tend to listen. So, you know, if you're saying, you know, a you are message, it's really important to say, you know, you're a great kid, not you're a lazy person. Because these are big, important things that children take on board. And literally, you know, the more often we repeat something to a child, the more likely they are to actually live up to it. So if you're, you know, again, one of the things I am very, very careful with is the language and the words that I use to communicate with my son, but also the words that I communicate to everybody. I will think before I speak. And sometimes, you know, when you're being stressed out as a parent, it's not an easy task. And it's really important just to know that, you know, backing off for a minute and making sure your own needs, authentic needs, are taken care of is that it's really, really important to come from a space of stability and calm. So, is there anything you'd like to say about that, Jill?
Yeah, I mean, all that is bringing up a lot of things for me around communication, and also I think you said about the "you are" statement, and I think it's really important to look at to have a message that when you're disciplining a child or when you're helping a child through something, is to refer to their behaviour and not them, and so that they begin to learn that it's about a way how you behave influences a reaction or has a consequence, and actually you have a choice then to change that behaviour, rather than making it a part of a personality thing or a more closer to who they are. It's actually getting that objectivity around how you can actually choose to change behaviour and therefore get a different result. So I think that's one thing that came up when you were talking there, Pennie. And also something around curiosity and then a kind of having an inquiring mind, so that things, because as you said, Pennie, there's so many influences out there, and actually more than ever, there's so much stuff out there, and it's kind of having, supporting children and young adults to have an inquiring mind and say, is what I'm seeing actually the case? Is this true? Do I subscribe to this? And actually having that level of inquiry and in curiosity and growing that, I think, is really important as well.
I think, definitely when children are getting to the stage where they're moving into adolescence, it's really important to teach them discernment, as you were saying, and it's, actually, is this the truth or is this just a version of the truth? One of the things that we again teach at Acorn to Oak is something called tact, which is telling the absolute complete truth, and it's really really interesting when you're dealing with certain children. They'll be checking you out to make sure for accuracy. I can't even say the word. Put my teeth back in. That you're actually correct, and they may make, they may have no other comparison, but it's actually, again, to exercise that muscle of discernment. And at times, we're all lazy and stupid and untidy and forgetful and mischievous, yakka. But it's really important that, in the old days, again, the preacher from the church would be thundering down, "You have sinned," and everybody has. And, we're all human. We're all in the human state, and therefore we will make mistakes. And it's really important to show a child that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not be, having your best day, but to help them realise that they can change that really quickly if they actually use discernment and actually use some self-discipline. Again, children tend to think that adults know everything, and they can even read your mind. I mean, I swear that Hector thinks I can read his mind. And, such are the thoughts of a child, And so if they're told that they're clumsy, they become nervous and therefore are clumsy. And, a child that's told you're a pest feels rejected and becomes depressed and needs reassurance, so actually pesters more. And, the child that's told they're an idiot may become violent, disagree on the outside, but inside sadly agrees. So, if you're an adult, you must be right. And that's how they tend to think. So, your messages work both on a conscious and unconscious level. And in my work, I often ask children to describe themselves. And, it's heartbreaking when they come up with, well, I'm a bad kid. Or I'm a nuisance. And, you look at that and just go, others will show confusion, like mum and dad say they love me, but I don't think it's what they really do. And this is when we start looking at it and just going, the confusion that some kids live in is just so heartbreaking. Excuse me as I have a drink. Jill would like to take over for a second.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, I always think when my kids were really young, I also listened and observed, and you learn so much just observing and listening to children, and you realise then the impact of what you say and how they look at you like that. And a kind of quite an amusing memory I have is that my middle daughter, Camilla, she thought I knew everybody in the world. And, this thing about, Pennie, like you were saying, children think you know everything and and you can read their minds. She literally, and then she'd say, oh, who's that, Mummy? And I go, I don't know. And she would look at me as if to say, what do you mean you don't know who that is? And it's that level of innocence as well. But it also, what they're projecting onto you is because they're looking to you for that level of guidance, for that level of, of support and nurturing. And so therefore, it's, you have, if you observe that, then you can understand where they're coming from.
Well, again, for me, it's, oh, hello, we're going into a break. So we'll see you on the other side of a break, okay? And we'll be discussing this more. Take care.
Your conscious connection to a more mindful world. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
I'm Kathy Williams, host of Sexy Mom Abundant Life radio show on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. On the show, we explore living abundantly in every area of your life. Ways to let go of limiting patterns and beliefs and to step into the flow of creativity and possibility, knowing you are supported by the universe.
We are talking about your life. Ever wonder, is this as good as it gets? No, it could be so much better. At Acorn to Oak, we know you are seeking more happiness, joy, unconditional love, financial freedom, passion, and purpose. Find your unique mojo and live an extraordinary life. Want to know more? Contact us at our website, acorntooak.org.uk.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Back, and we're talking about conscious parenting again. It's part 2. We were discussing it last week, and we're into the discussion again now. So, you know, it's really interesting. Children, they hear the words, but unconsciously they can hear, smell, and even see that the feeling behind the words. And it's all in the way that we say it. We can choose to say to our children, I'm angry right now and I want you to tidy up your toys now, and have no fear about lasting effects. However, again, if we say you're lazy little brat and you never do what you're told, and then repeat this kind of message, then a conflict occurs, and then the result can be devastating for the child, who will carry it in their unconscious mind for a lifetime. You know, as an adult, you know, our advice is don't be happy or loving when you aren't feeling that way. It's confusing, and it makes the children become more evasive and in time quite disturbed. We can be honest about our feelings without putting the children down. We can handle, you know, a child can handle, I'm really tired today, or right now I'm too angry, especially if this matches how we feel, and they'll sense it. You know, it helps them to realise that you're human too, which is a healthy option to take as a conscious parent. You know, it is really important that we actually help our children gain emotional intelligence. You know, and one of the things that we use at Acorn to Oak is very much, you know, okay, mad, sad, glad, scared, and you know, we have stickers. I have stickers for Hector, and he basically gets a sticker on how he's feeling, and I check in with him and see what's going on. And it's really important to talk to the children. You know, again, for any age from 3 upwards is very, you know, when they're hitting their linguistic stage, and it's just helping them find the words which will help them describe what they're feeling inside. So again, Jill, what's your take on this?
I think it's so important, because I think what sometimes parents can get into, and I felt myself falling into this trap as well when my kids were growing up, is you feel like you've got to present a certain kind of almost perfect front, you know, as though you're different somehow, in order to achieve some kind of authority or whatever it is. Whereas actually, in fact, by being yourself and being honest, as Pennie says, you actually gain a closer relationship, and you also allow your children to grow healthily and emotionally as well. I think this idea of perfection also gets in the way of good parenting. You know, there's this whole school of thought about being good enough, and actually that includes being able to show that you are a human being, and then they can also see, okay, so it's okay to feel like that, or it's okay to have a moment when you're not feeling great or whatever. So it's very much allowing them to see that, rather than trying to attempt a kind of false perfection, if you like, or some kind of
you know, it's really incredible. And I mean, you know, I'm talking about, I grew up in the 1960s, and you know, very, you know, conscious parenting was probably not even heard of in those days, and you know. And it was amazing, some of the thoughts around how to raise children. And, you know, by telling, you know, again, a great, good old statement was, you know, tell them they're bad and it'll make them good. And you look at it and go, excuse me? And the madness around that, I just begin to shake my head. It's an example of the law of opposites. The law of opposites does not work. And it's just really quite interesting, because orthodox medicine is based on the law of opposites. And we know that works to a certain degree, but it doesn't work all the time. And those are the dark ages of child rearing, Fortunately, we've begun to escape that. However, it's not that quickly. And, our minds remember everything that has ever happened to us. And, if statements like that are repeated to us. And I was doing a workshop a little while ago, and we got a whiteboard out and basically asked people what were some of the statements that were bouncing around their heads. And I've just written down a list because I was amazed by it, and it certainly threw me for a minute when people started talking, and they were just basically saying, some of the stuff that was written down is you're lazy, you're clumsy, you're stupid, you're a nuisance, you're just a girl, you're too young to understand, you're selfish, a pest, dirty, thoughtless, inconsiderate, always late, you're just greedy, bad-tempered, brainless noise, gutless, a worry, crazy, you make your mother sick, you're ugly, you're plain, you're immature, you're just like your father. And all of this was written up, and these were adults who were writing this. And some of them, when they were actually writing, were breaking down and crying from the memory of what had been said to them as children. And it just astonishing stuff. And, we can have as many cuts and bruises in our brain as we do on, when we get cut or bruised on our physical body. And, it causes such an electrical storm in the brain that it can lead on to, bigger pathology. And, you do look at it and just go, where has attention deficit disorder come from? Where has that come from? And where has all sorts of different pathologies come from if it hasn't been that actually our children have not been cared for in a nurturing way? And there are astonishing results and side effects because of this. And, you do look at it and just go, it's really, really important to begin to realise that conscious parenting is what we need to embrace and what we need to get with the program, in other words. And it's, astonishing if you hit the internet and you actually just type in conscious parenting and look at some of the articles and some of the things that have hit the internet about this. And the other thing that we forget also is that, children are amazing at hearing things that we don't think they've heard. And it's the unconscious hearing is a phenomenon that children are brilliant at. And you think you're talking privately to your spouse, and depending on what tone you're using with your spouse. But when you disagree as a family, or your partners disagree, and it's really incredible. You could have the TV on, you could have music on, you could actually have gone into a separate room and be having that difficult conversation with a partner in a room. But it's amazing how the children will hear you. It's something that you just don't realise, and they immediately pick up and think, what are they talking about? They must be talking about me. And anything that you say to your partner at that stage, the children will take on board as a criticism of themselves. And this is where children, when they actually get into maybe a bit of trauma later on, i.e. a partnership breaks up, maybe one of the partners leaves, whether that's mum or dad, and they will think it is their fault. Whereas in fact it has nothing to do with them. But because they have been unconsciously hearing, that is the decision that they've made in their own mind, that actually the person who left because they no longer loved them, whereas in fact it's got probably nothing to do with the children. It's got to do with partners just falling out and deciding to go separate ways. So it's really, again, when you're looking at conscious parenting, you're also looking very much at consciously deciding to live your life in a much more aware way. And again, it's really interesting. Our hearing systems is like a filter. They filter through the conversation in a room, and if a key word or phrase is used, it's like the brain goes on, it puts it through, and our conscious attention is drawn to that. So it's really, really important. Again, I underline that communication is king. And it's really, really important to just take a breath before you start communicating with anybody, whether that's a child or a fellow adult. Is there anything that you would like to add there, Jill?
Yes, I mean, what that really illustrates for me is the fact that, especially in the early years, children, they are the centre of their world. So anything that's said or done, or it all relates to them, because they haven't learnt that things are not always relating to them, or it's not always personal, until they mature. And part of conscious parenting is helping children to mature and see themselves as part of a community, a family, etc., rather than not everything not revolving around them. But yes, very much so. And so if they hear things, and that could be also in the classroom, it could be in, we have this, I don't know whether people relate to this, but when you're in assembly at school, which we had every morning, the whole school assembled together, and if the headmistress said something or somebody had done something, you immediately think it's you, and it hasn't nothing to do with you at all.
Absolutely.
And it's like, okay, I know it's nothing to do with me. Why do I feel like I'm responsible? And that's a leftover from that feeling that everything that when you're younger revolves around you, and so therefore you're responsible for it, or it's going to affect you in some other way.
It's amazing, really. It's amazing when we talk about hearing and selective hearing, and there's a great story out there that late one night a petrol tanker that runs out of control careers down a hill and smashes into the front wall of a house. And when the rescuers arrived at the house, they were amazed to find this young mother sleeping really heavily, undisturbed by the crash. But as they stood there, not knowing what to do, the baby starts crying in the back room, and the mother instantly wakes up. What's going on? And it's amazing, I'm just saying this about the filters in her hearing system at the time were basically clocked into the baby, and therefore she would hear the baby but not necessarily anything else. And somebody said to me, when I first told this story, I can remember telling it at a workshop and them saying, "Oh no, that would never happen." And I just laughed and went, you know, it's true. I'll tell you, when I go to sleep, I go to sleep. A brass band could go through my bedroom and I wouldn't hear it. However, if Hector coughed, I would be awake. And it is like that. And, you know, children have that filter. They will hear different words and different setup or different sequence of words, and they will hear it and hear it and hear it. And they will pretty much phase everything else out. And it's really, you know, when people turn around and say, oh, don't worry about them, they're not listening. And then, you know, it's amazing. They have such acute listening powers. I mean, my son, bless his cotton socks, can hear a sweet wrapper being unwrapped 50 yards away, and he will know. And it's just literally candy or whatever it is. And, you know, we may well include the time that they're asleep and therefore they don't hear anything. They do. They'll take it on board in dreams whilst they're asleep. And it's obvious that when a child, you know, has not learnt or decided to let you know that they can speak, the baby for months before it can speak has been following every single word with such intent, because that's how they learn. And it amazes me how many parents who've been fighting bitterly for years or desperately unhappy for some reason, and they just don't think the kids know anything about it. Of course they do. Of course they know. Children, in fact, know almost everything about everything. They just may be keeping it quiet, but they know exactly what's going on. And what, you know, the signs and symptoms of this is, you know, by bedwetting or trying to murder their sibling in play, or, you know, which does happen. But they know, and they just don't know how to deal with it. And it's up to us as you know, conscious parents to help them direct the channels of their mind, and, you know, and to boost their self-esteem by, you know, genuinely liking and appreciating them while they're in earshot, you know. And it's especially useful at stages, different ages and stages in their life, to directly praise them, even though they may find it embarrassing as an adolescent. Anyway, we're coming up for a break.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What Is Going On. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
We are talking about your life. Ever wonder, is this as good as it gets? No, it could be so much better. At Acorn to Oak, We know you are seeking more happiness, joy, unconditional love, financial freedom, passion, and purpose. Find your unique mojo and live an extraordinary life. Want to know more? Contact us at our website, acorntooak.org.uk.
Long ago, you wouldn't think of galloping on a horse while doing calligraphy, and you wouldn't have attempted to ride your bike while typing a letter. Yet you think you can safely operate a multi-ton vehicle while texting? Behind the wheel is no place to multitask. If you want to BRB, drive now and text later. Lives depend on it.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
Hi, we're back. We're talking about conscious parenting, and we're also talking about communication right now. And again, it's for me, hearing and healing are so important as well together. And while I was working as a nurse, I had quite a few experiences with different people we thought were asleep under a general anaesthetic or in a coma, and reporting that they had heard different conversations that had gone on around them at the time. And as a senior sister within an intensive care environment, I was always encouraging friends and family to talk or read to somebody who was on life support, knowing that their hearing was the last thing to go. And it's really important. I had a personal experience around this when a close friend of ours fell off a bus and hit her head on the pavement. And without going into too much detail, she ended up having surgery. And following surgery, she was in an intensive care on a life support. And her family were around her bed most of the time, and I visited on a daily basis while she was so critically ill. And I'd go in and read the paper or talk to her about what was happening in my life and what we would do when she woke up. And as I talked, I told her to imagine that every cell of her body was being revitalized by the sound of my voice. And when she could breathe on her own, and she woke up, several weeks later, when asked how she was and what she remembered, she said she remembered Pennie's voice. It was like a lifeline. And it's so important to understand that, scientists have realized that a message that goes in deeply to a person's mind is accompanied with all of the signals that reinforce it. And it's called anchoring. So, part of anchoring for our children is to anchor something to a pleasant and comfortable memory, so that whenever you actually say something in a loud voice with a frown, it makes the statement even worse. And it's making sure that your body language is actually backing up if you're talking to them in a encouraging way, that actually your body language is encouraging. Because if there is incongruence in that communication, the children are going to pick it up. They're just going to pick it up so quick, it's untrue. And it's really important to make sure that our children feel safe and secure and nurtured. And it's really important that they get a really good background from their mum and dad. So again, Jill, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Yes, I absolutely, because of the mechanism that goes into play is that if a negative message has been kind of engrafted, as it were, and the feelings that go along with that, then there's a mechanism that goes into play whereby evidence is gathered to grow that belief and to reinforce it. And so it's really important to understand the mechanism, and therefore think about how we're all human. We can all say things. We can all be stressed. We can all say things, and is actually then to quickly repair that before it really takes a hold, because we're not we're not perfect. We're human, as Pennie said, and we all make mistakes. We all maybe just say something off the cuff in reaction before we're able to catch it. And so therefore it's then repairing that potential damage as soon as possible, and reassuring, making sure, when we're talking about conscious parenting, we're not talking about perfect. We're talking about good enough, and being aware and having that level of awareness, so that you're giving everybody the best shot possible.
I think it's really, one of the things that I can remember in my own childhood was that my dad said to me once, it wasn't the job of the adult to apologise. And it taught me so much at that particular time. Because he was obviously not going to apologise for me for something that he had done. And it was, I took that on board and learnt that lesson and went, ooh, I'm going to do something different. So if I do mess up with alarming regularity, I will actually say to Hector that I'm sorry. Mummy was angry, it was not nice, and I'm sorry. And we have... Hector and I have been doing sing and sign, so we do sign languages too. So, one of the things I taught him early on was, the sorry sign. And, he comes up to me, and when he's misbehaved, it's really important for him to say he's sorry. So that's great. And it's equally important for me to actually say to him, I shouldn't have said that. Hey, I'm Mummy sorry. And to actually make sure that we talk about it and we hug and it's done. And therefore the energy is completely and utterly done by the time we've finished. And this is a really important tool for all of us, because, we can be overwrought as parents at times, and we can be remarkably strong. And, it's bad to get angry around children, but it's going to happen on occasions. And, we shouldn't beat ourselves up for it. On the contrary, the children need to learn that you can get angry, but you can discharge the tension and be heard in safety. And, it's really quite interesting, because another person I learned a lot from in my life is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and an amazing lady. And she actually talks about and says that real anger only lasts about 20 seconds, and most of it is noise. And, the problem comes when a positive message, you are great, or we love you and we'll look after you, are not as equally strong or reliable. And so, we need to repeat those things with just as much as we repeat the, get out of the way, or you're being silly, or what's all this rubbish for. It's, almost every child is dearly loved. But many children do not know this fact, because many adults will go to their death still believing that they are a nuisance or they're a disappointment to their parents. And that is absolutely tragic. And, it's one of the most moving family things is to go into family therapy and actually be able to clear away some of this misunderstanding. And it's, so very, very important, and especially in the world today when we have all sorts of things making us anxious, and depressed and worried about little things. We must learn to look after, not just our own families, but the global family, and actually begin to take care of each other with love and grace, and making sure that people realise that they're not on their own at this very disturbing time on the planet, and that we're all here, we're all doing what we can do, and we're trying to do the best we can. And if our children realise this, then they're going to be able to be much better adults, and maybe be able to take that legacy forward. That actually conscious parenting is so much key in the world today. So, Jill, is there anything else that you would like to add or say?
Absolutely. I think it's about, having that empathy for self and others. And so it's, I think, because actually coming back to the point about, being real, being honest and communicating as an adult to your children, allows them to do the same, so they can learn empathy and learn that actually they can care for you sometimes, and that gives them tremendous self-esteem if they can, even from a young age, if you say, what would be really helpful right now if you could bring my slippers, or whatever it is, because actually that allows them to grow in empathy and understanding of others' needs as well as their own. So I think it is about that, and therefore they begin to learn that they, as well as their needs being met, they can help to take care of others' needs as well, and learn that level of empathy and community as well, which is so important right now. It really is.
Yeah. And and we all hate it when we actually suddenly realise that we've just spouted something and we've heard our own parents talking instead of us. And it's just like, oh, good grief. That's exactly what my parents used to say to me, and I used to hate it. So, it pulls you up short, doesn't it? It's those old tape recordings, and you're on automatic pilot, and you open your mouth and the words come out before you can even catch them, and it's just like, holy, I've done it again, or it is just that. And you just have to laugh and shake your head, and if you need to apologise to your child, do that, and then move on. And it's the trouble is, I know a certain stage of my father's life, he was a brooder, and he'd brood on things, and he'd then beat himself up because he didn't think he was a good parent, and all this type of stuff. And you just let it go, You've said what you said. Now let's just get on with it. And it really is, important for us to show our children self-control. And if we have a lack of control in an area which winds us up, and it may be that you're fed up with your child who keeps on digging up your rose bush or whatever, and he's obsessed with it, or whatever it is. We scold them, or, worst comes scenario, we actually give them a tap, or shake them, or whatever. And it's really important to know that, we need to look at ourselves emotionally and have emotional intelligence as a conscious parent. And we're not going to get through some of the different things that are thrown at us, like I was saying, the battlefield scenario. We're not going to get through them if we cannot look after ourselves emotionally. And, when money is short and you're overworked or you're lonely or you're bored, you know, being at home at the moment because people are still on furlough or they're not actually, you know, they're not going to the office, so they don't have the distractions. It can be a very destructive time in a family's life. And we need to step up to the plate here. And we need to make sure that our children are being cared for responsibly and lovingly and with as much compassion and humour as we can actually lay our hands on. Because sometimes you just have to shake your head and laugh. You know, it's really important. And, you know, and it's also acknowledging that, you know, within ourselves as an adult, you know, who are we really angry at? You know, it's usually not the child. It may be your boss or your spouse or the landlord or whatever. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the show, and thank you so much, Jill, for joining us again. It's been fantastic.
Great.
So, yeah.
Bye, everybody.